welcome to the Reframing Mindset Podcast. We are clear my head of the thoughts that are preventing clarity, practice my speech, among other things. Episodes range from informative knowledge to funny stories about my experiences, and in the future, maybe include interviews. So subscribe and enjoy. Episodes drop every other day.
Okay, welcome back to Repair Master Podcast. My name is Spencer Brooks, and this episode is basically episode about, and funny enough, is something that was taught me by OGs in the day and stuff like that. But coming up is something that working with, building your career and everything like that. Is something that you really have to actually come in and take to heart and seriously coming up is that you don't trust your coworkers and stuff like that. And why is that? Coming up, just like for example in school, whatever, and all these things, you're coming up and you want to accomplish a goal. Want to accomplish a goal. You want to be this and you want to be that, and all these things. And you see you come from family as something. You ever hear the term like, oh, first generation, graduate and all these stuff and everything like that. For the first generation coming out, graduate for our family, there's like, oh, you're expected to be this, you're expected to be that, and all these stuff, the standards and those things. So coming up and everything like that, the first thing is that you have to actually know yourself. Know who you are. Know who you are. Because for one, good. If you hear a story to get one degree and all this stuff. Funny enough, before the journey through the high school was a rough one and all these things. But yeah, the core friends that after made there, made there was relevant even throughout life. Even throughout life, in the sense that that core friend giving all this suffering was core coming up. Even in my adult years now, even in my university days, everything that we have to meet new people and all this stuff, and interact with and all this stuff. But the core friends from those days were even when they don't have the same tendency. Like for example, they try to do a Christian walk and all this, and then you see the negative side. One is the opposite and thing like that. The those core friends during my high school days and stuff like that. That I meet, the core friends, uh, not not those the core friend is just was relevant even to these days. I am so far yet to actually reaching to the working world, and this is it relevant when I talk about the immediate lifestyle, the person that got me into the podcast and everything like that. And it's important to when actually start your working journey is to know yourself. And why is that? Funny enough, I was out there doing my trading for for my customer service job and all these things. And funny enough, and this is where I talk about integrity and having knowing yourself and everything like that. Great thing for dopamine detox and everything like that to know yourself is that in the working world you do not know where you're going to end up with. So you may end up at a you may get fired, you may retire and you change company, everything like that. But you will actually be the same person. So what will happen is that a moral that you say, okay, you have here, not will say you change company, everything like that. It will be the same morals you have. You want to go into, you'll be the same person going to a new company. But what happens is that you actually be going with new people, going with new people. Some new people come in and be like, oh, um, you do team building and everything like that and all this stuff, team building. But people will naturally have the same tendency. So, so funny enough, and when I talk about the episode that they keep an OG in the gates here, don't trust the co-workers and everything like that. They'll be like, oh, sometimes like, even if I'm the co-worker, they'll be like, oh my god, I always use podcast and get, people see me and I say, they don't, the co-worker thing is, they don't really, um, go there to, to make friends and things like that. Reason why is that, for just like for example, I'm out there so doing the work in the trading, talk about my customer service experience, and then boom, coming up and everything like that, you hear a term, and that's the reason why I mentioned the high school days, because see, for example, you want to be a nerd and all these stuff. You have a nerd right now that could actually go out and pick up grades and all these things and everything like that. They all have the same thing. And the reason for that is that I post now. I'm going through my stuff, and going through my stuff, I see some things during high school. Like for example, I see a book, and they say, "Oh, this smell bad and all these stuff." And those stuff were embarrassing back then and all these things. But hey, coming up now in your career, yes, those things will be pretty. You take these stuff as pretty, you can be like, oh, I have to work on it and everything like that. But coming up, what you realize is that you would um you come in you're trying to get a work, you weren't employed, you were actually struggling to get employment. You work yourself to employment and all this stuff. And what happens is that you have people there that established themselves long ago coming in and trying to beat you into doing stuff. So like coming in like, oh, for example, if you want to do that post like, oh, I'm keeping my this and that. You see people coming in and be like, oh, yeah, I'll try to pressure you into doing this and all this. Afternoon. So you have this and that, and do you have this and all this stuff? Are you this? Are we this and that? And, asking these stuff. When, for example, you're out there so trying to get a work, you're trying to get a secure your position in the company. So securing your position in the company. And this was the experience that I actually had where I realized that going through the trading and all these stuff and getting all the truck all the push the the negative aspect of being like, oh yo, I'm this, that and all these stuff. And and what happens is that at one instance I'm getting this critique, and then this critique here, and then what happens is that that critique there at that company when I was just coming up, um, the person doing the critique had a different issue. And it's like, oh, if I were to go there and try and say, oh, Carl, that issue, and be like, oh, yeah, that would be something. Then, boom, go to the next company. And then I was called out again for a different issue. I talk about, hey, I'm doing the work, I'm sweating a lot and all this stuff. So, smell was something. So, that's the reason why I mentioned going through some books. And they say, okay, yo, is it, you call it smelling bad and all this stuff. I was like, oh, and going to the next company, going to the next company, went there and I get called out for that because hey, the work I was lifting a lot of bags, I got sweaty all the time, and the work didn't really give me a lot of pay. So for example, things like going out and buying perfume and stuff like that at the time, it wasn't really something that I would think about to go purchasing. But what happens is that that's it, the important thing we're talking about. We say the interest of the workers and everything like that. And be like, oh, yeah, coming up as here, don't trust people and all this stuff. You, at the end of the day, no matter where you go and everything like that, you have to give account for yourself. You have to give account for yourself. You have to be account for yourself. So everything that funny enough, all those critiques that I got coming up and building my career, they were given to me by people wearing the company's outfit or the, getting the company's pay, getting the company's pay. So I was in the training doing that work and all this stuff. The the person giving me critique was working for the same, even though she was at the time making more money than me. So we were both coming there to get the same paycheck. Like we get the same paycheck on the same day. And funny enough, when they requested it, we wear the same clothes. I went to the next company, I got the same critique, and funny enough, the critique that I got was from somebody else wearing. Well, it's not the same. It wasn't the same company that the person gave me the critique. It was a different company, but the critique from the person was really there from a person wearing a different clothes, like a different company. So what will happen is that you would take that critique, take the bait, and be like, oh, try to um counteract and be like, oh yes, this and that. And what will happen is that you go, you lose your work, you lose your reputation, but someone else is actually out there so wearing a different company shirt. And then what will happen is that all those the momentum that you built is lost because hey, you have to actually remember that you were coming from really an unemployed state. You were really coming from an unemployed state, and then for example you for example got some work and everything like that, and then in the working world, and that's the funny thing about the working world, the working world, they don't see you as a friend and everything like that. No matter how good you are in the thing, they don't see you as a friend and everything like that. They see you as a person to help them try to make money. And funny enough, that's usually what I say. Even when they make the money and thing like that, and be like, oh yo, if you make them a lot of money and all this stuff, it's no friend thing. It's no friend thing. If they can find someone better, they will try to find. As soon as you become a negative asset, no matter how good you are, as soon as you become someone negative and be like, okay, I'm going to, like, for example, you want to say something like, oh, I want to ask for a raise or anything like that, you'll become a negative asset to their eyes. So that's the funny thing about everything like that, bad companies, everything like that. Once you become a negative aspect and everything like that, you become a negative thing in their eyes, in their eyes. So that's the important thing of knowing yourself, knowing yourself in the sense that if you're able to take your L's yourself, take your L's yourself and everything like that, no matter where you are, you your integrity, no matter if you actually have valid integrity or whatever, it's your integrity. If you're this up company and going to a bad company, it's your integrity. It's your integrity that they're questioning. But funny enough, they were wearing a different shirt and everything like that. So that coming so reaching so far in your career, what I was after I say is that don't trust your coworkers in this because they do not have the see they at any point in time, if you were to retaliate in many of those situations, your 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 company would not hesitate to get rid of you. That's the funny thing. And then um the reputation will go through everywhere, be like, oh yeah, this person is this and all this stuff. When maybe you weren't that person at all. Maybe you weren't that person at all. That person was rage baiting you or baiting you or all this stuff, trying to get a reaction out of you and all these things. And what happens is that your emotion gets into your ability to say, hey, I can do this work. I can do this work. And the funny enough, this can come from anywhere, even supervisors. And this that's the funny thing where you'll be like, oh, you're coming out of poverty. You'll be like, oh, in the ghetto or for it up in the ghetto or coming out of your family stuff where these stuff are stuff in the family. They'll be like, oh, your family rich, beauty, me, all these stuff. In the working world is a different thing where a supervisor will be there disrespecting you. You're not working under you, be like, oh, yo, disrespecting you, coming out, undermining your skills and everything like that. Like you work, and that's a funny thing where you'll be like, oh, you're building. Funny enough, the important thing is you're know yourself. You're out there trying to build a career. You're building a career for yourself. So you go there and you say, oh, you're working for a supervisor and everything like that. Even there, they expecting and all these stuff. Just like at the end of the day, in the answer to God and all this stuff, the supervisor is not. they can give you, they can give you the best recommendation and all this stuff. But when you go out on the field, you have to perform. You have to perform. Is no joke and everything. It's no fun and all this stuff. You have to perform. You have to go out and do the work and all this stuff. So funny enough, um, you may get fatigues coming up and all these things, but you're going to realize that you at the end of the day, all those critiques are valid if you can't put in the work. If you, if you can't put in the work, you can't put in the work. So you have to actually always keep your goal in mind. You have to actually always keep your goal in mind. And these these experiences with these different co-workers say that hey, the important thing for this lesson is that for one, you can lose your work. You can lose your work at any point in time. They can come in and be like, oh yo, this you're fired for this and all these stuff. And then when you're out there to get fired and all these things, life goes. That's the funny thing about the working world. Life goes on. Life goes on. Just like for example, I talk about the episode you're out there so messaging and all these stuff. I talk others picking up and all these things and then boom, you message them oh yes and then boom 10 at the same time. It can be the same thing for me where they like, oh yeah, I'm gonna love and all these stuff. Boom. I'm messaging stuff like that. So it's like important thing is that again don't trust anyone as far as you can show them. It takes time to actually build a good reputation. Actually it takes time to build a good reputation for yourself. And it can be lost very experience can show me that you can lose a reputation real quick. Our friends, funny enough, great, very smart and all these stuff in high school and all these stuff. Boom, made it to university. One bad move and this bad reputation just made it and all these stuff. And funny enough, I don't know the situation with him and all these things. But that one thing, no matter how bad, if it was true or not and all these stuff, that one reputation will be like, oh yo, that person coming up, he was really great. He was really good at his stuff. Great, not as good as he can be in his area. And one bad thing, um, even though in situations he could afford it, afford that loss, but that was actually a loss. That was actually a loss. Coming up making money. We'll be like, oh yeah, that dorm and all this stuff was a great dorm to be in cheap, cheap and relative and one bad move made he lost his privilege there have to spend more money and all these stuff and all these things. So it's like just like just like that even in your working world life and all this stuff. One bad move can come in and detriment your whole reputation and all this stuff and it sticks and all this stuff. And I was like, yo, the important thing on this journey before you actually go in the career is that oh and know yourself. Know yourself in the sense that even if you get employed, if you're out there to get employed, be very grateful for the fact that you're out there to get the employment. But know that at the end of the day, you're working for you. You're out there so working for you. and your um they are there the company the company can move on without you. That's the funny thing. The company can move on without you. So go there, do your goal, and the important thing is to actually keep your integrity where you like. Oh, you go there for a goal, you're out there to going out, you can have fun and celebrate and everything like that. But funny enough, even with friends and everything like that, jokes and everything like that, where you can make jokes and all this stuff. But um, you have to the funny thing about coming up about building reputation and all this stuff, poor friends and everything like that. It's different levels. There are different levels. Even in the but in the working world, it's from you from my experience. From you leave the university days, I think that was the best time you're going to actually be at least the closest of friends that you will ever be. That's because in the working world, for one, it's messy. You see people from back in the days, you see people from future days and everything like that. And it's very messy. It's very messy. So all those critiques that I talk about and all this stuff gonna come in fly and fly, you're so coming up, work, applying for a job, you see the person coming in and very nice interviewing you, nice interviewing you where they know that oh they're not going to give you the job and all this stuff. It's really fluff, really fluff. So funny enough you actually reach this phase in life and stuff like that. I see people coming up and they it's a put in the work and all this stuff and they disrespect you and all this stuff. And you be like, oh yeah, you know what? Let me go and disrespect them back and all this stuff. Funny enough, if you do that in that situation, the momentum you actually have is gone because you lose your work, the reputation goes that, oh yeah, you know, Colin went out and this person and all these stuff and and funny enough I see you're two working there for a paycheck. Wearing the clothes. So when they with disrespect you, that's funny thing. It's a way in the work. Yeah, it's a way in the working clothes. I really have actually do that. But say they disrespect you and all these things. You go there, you get the disrespect, and then what happens is that when the when you get the negative impact, I'm like, oh yeah, no, this they will say, hey, Colin from this company did this and everything like that. But funny enough, going forward, it's not the fact they say, oh, calling from this company. Going forward, they're going to always see this person, calling, calling, calling. They don't, they don't matter which company they go, they're always going to see calling this stuff. So, that's it, the funny thing I talk about it. Don't trust your coworkers and important thing. This was a thing talk about in the game. Where be like, oh yo, don't trust your coworkers as far as you can throw them, or don't trust anyone as far as you can throw them. Coming out of poverty in your own family and all these stuff will worse could be even worse than the co-worker. Supervisors you're working under say, okay, yeah, you feel that these people are professional. I reach this level where I be like, oh yeah, they are really unprofessional. Where I be like, oh, they're coming in and people out there so music they talk about coming out where I'm coming from. Links. People saying things like links and network and all this stuff. When actually do this, we realize those are draconian terms. Those are draconian terms people use in those links and all these stuff. And what happens is that you get fish push. uh, you coming up where I'm coming from. Boom, you go out and you get your visa, these stuff. You hear people coming out from the other side, coming from like a first world country, coming from a first world country, making a lot of money, and you go there and you actually see the work that they're doing. Sometimes they're doing stuff like cleaning up people and all these things and all working as like, oh yo, they're making a lot of money and that is the word that they glorify, because what happens is that that is better that is actually better than the work that they were doing. And it's like you, like for example, you'd be like, oh yo, you see you coming out in the work, and it's like, oh, what you doing these days? You know, I'm a sanitary supervisor, a sanitary engineer, and all this stuff, picking up garbage and all this stuff, and be like, oh yo, hey, remember going to school, that was a fall off, but hey, that's the thing, giving you a paycheck and all this stuff. So funny enough that reaching this far, don't trust your coworkers, because even me as well, the critiques will come both sides. The critiques will come both sides. But funny enough, as an employee, you're gonna realize that the critiques is coming up. And just like for example, we always on the plantation, you're coming enough, getting the critiques. Uh, Funny enough, we learned that when you actually coming up, most of the person that sold out the people into slavery were the people that were actually there, were actually the same kind of people. Those were the people that sold out their people into slavery. The people that were there, that their own kind actually put them into it more while. So sometimes you may be out there, so putting a negative connotation to stuff like that. The other person, your person that you may trust the most and all these stuff, will be the one that sell you into the worst situation. May come in and sell you into the worst situation. And it's like those are the things you're experiencing. Like, but coming up here, this is trying to work money, you're trying to build a career. You actually reach this far, you reach this employment stage and all this stuff. You're gonna actually realize that though people actually will do you that bad. People will actually do you that bad. And when they do you that bad, funny enough, if you were to retaliate, the bad reputation will be on you. Bad reputation will be on you. They'll be like, oh yo, they because they do this and all this stuff. Boom, you get fired from the company. You don't have any money and all these things. And that person, funny enough, doesn't even realize that you exist and all these stuff. Those so that's the funny thing about coming up and all these things, and growing up hearing about Einstein and all these stuff. All these person, those names didn't become relevant bec- until they made it. Until they made it. And funny enough, each fall off was, if you did not make it, all those critiques that you get, it will just be another statistic. And funny enough, in the working world, the statistic is so bad that it will stick on you, and the company will move on. Just like the friend I talk about today. Growing up and say, oh, in my high school days, I was not the best. I started out at the bottom and all this stuff. So relatively, the person there, I'm coming out and being called a nerd. I'm being called a nerd, but hey, I was actually at the bottom. I was actually at the bottom. They called me a nerd. I was actually at the bottom. We have nerd there that were actually cooler than me and all this stuff. Getting called a nerd there and all this stuff. So funny enough, you can be a cool nerd. That's so that's the funny thing about actually coming up and all this stuff. The bad connotation there could be people they say that accept you for the bad connotation. What would technically be a bad connotation? So you can get the bad connotation and be dumb. So sometimes be like, oh yo, they can call you a nerd and you're dunce. That can happen. So in the working world, they call you this and that, and you're a bad worker. But you can be a bad worker and be accepted by the company. The company can love you, give you raise, promotion, and all this stuff for being a bad worker, for being a what for bad being a bad worker. That's how the working world. That's how the working world where people can come in and be like, oh yo, they're giving you raise for being a bad worker. And it's like, oh, so this is where integrity and all these stuff coming in and be like, oh no, you're going there to work to build a life for yourself. You're building the life to go there to build the life for yourself. Because what you realize that they people out there, so you can't trust them as far as you can throw them. You can't trust them as far as you can throw them. Nobody knows their story. Nobody knows their story and all this stuff. Is that you can't trust a person as far as you can throw them. You can't trust no matter how you can't trust them as far as you can throw them. And coming up, um, coming up, you will get the critiques. And funny enough, if you actually were to retaliate many times, you would be the one that take the fall. When you go there and take the fall, when you go there and take the fall, the reputation is on you. The people like reputation is on you. You get the bad connotation and all this stuff, and that fall off. And funny enough, the same situation goes where boom, the bad reputation comes, and you have people, and this is the reason why I say I don't just go work and all this stuff. They'll be like, oh yeah, they can't do, they can't. You have to work for yourself. The bad connotation will come, and that person will get the bad reputation, and you see that person get it and skirt it off, and be like, oh yo, come back. Even though they lost some privilege, they come back and see them get the same things like that and all, same privileges and everything like that. Because they have that just like for example, you can be a nerd and cool accepted in the popular group and all this stuff. You're nerd and cool and all this stuff. But but say for example, you yourself actually went out and attempt that thing, not only you would fail and lose your reputation, you don't have the charisma to even go back and even try to attempt um, most of the comeback things that people would try to go come back and all this stuff. You aren't you aren't at that level. You aren't at that level. But funny enough, the co-worker thing will be like, oh yo, you can't trust them as far as you can trust them. You can't trust them as far as you can trust them and all these stuff. So it's like you have to you go there funny enough, you go the best experience you will actually get in your very life is the time that you were coming up when you were very young and all these stuff coming up. You see how the people treat you there. You see them no matter how good you are and all this stuff, you see them undermining your skills and everything like that. You see them there every day and all this stuff undermining your skills. And you really and funny enough, when you actually come up and be like, oh yeah and all this stuff and be like, oh yeah, you made it and all this stuff, you're gonna realize that hey, all those days you were actually giving me those same disrespect. You were actually giving me all those disrespect and all these stuff. Hey, I'm not the, just like for example coming up, I was not the best at getting girls and all these. I was a certain person and all these things. Hey, I tried, get the feel and all these stuff. Say for example I get the girl and all these things, you will get the girl and all this stuff. 10 people out there are trying to get the girl and all this stuff. But you can't change, you can't put the you can go out and be like, oh yeah, I wanna change this girl. No, she has to actually buy into it. She has to actually want to be in that thing like that. And competing for it is going to be a lost cause. It's actually gonna be a lost cause. We'll be like, oh yeah, the girl and all these stuff and running up and all this and we'll be like, oh yeah. Funny enough, just like the working world. This is the funny thing about working now, so part sometimes you're just working on truck job. The stuff you're listening to, sometimes you're working on truck. So it could be like resale or wholesale or everything like that. But the co-worker thing is really relevant because what happens is that these, for example, you're just working minimum wage and having these issues. Say you get the promotion and get the $1 billion per year check and all this stuff. You will actually have the same co-worker issue from your OCA days. But worse, they're trying to cut you out and all these stuff. Worse, they're trying to diss you and all this stuff. And if you did not build the core habits from those who see your days when you did that have everything, when you actually get bigger and all these stuff. Not only you will actually put in that same situation, but the loss will be very great. The loss will be very great. That people will come in and be like, "Oh, yo, you were this person," and all these things like that. And funny enough, and what happens is that they will move on. They will actually move on. The funny thing about the university is, my university experience is that I talk about the domestic affairs experience. Funny enough, one of the funny thing about that those days was that people out there to come in, you form the bond and all these stuff. And people, when opportunity comes, when the opportunity came, they left. They actually left because they were the better situation. They went to go and get the better situation because what? If people come there and be like, "Oh yeah, I came for my degree, I did I came for this," and all this stuff. So hey, this is gonna propel me in my career, so I'm gonna go and take this like that. So for example, there's a building, say you're building a life with a girl and all this. So you're building a life with a girl and all this up in the university. The opportunity come and be like, "Oh yeah, they fly out and all this stuff." That actually those are experiences going to university will be like, "Oh yeah, you know a person and all this stuff." Boom, opportunity came, they go away and all this stuff. They went away and you had to move on. When they come back, you have new people in your life and all this stuff. But only you and the person know where you were when you just met. Only you and the person know you where you were when you just met. So when you come back now, boom, you come back and then they come back into your life again. They come back and the perception they had for you back then was the same perception they had back then. So if you come like, "Oh yeah, that's important in the working world," when you doing and all this, and you be like, "Oh," they come in and always see you as a joke and all these stuff. They come back again, the worst gonna see you as a joke and all this stuff. I experienced this. No matter how high I went, no matter how high I went, they actually came back and see me as a joke and all this stuff. But funny enough, if I actually look back at my situation and all this stuff, I look back as a joke and all, even though I actually was maybe seeing as a joke, looking at my life situation back then, I was actually in my best position at that time. When I made it to my single room and all these things like that, I was in the best position. So getting the critiques there, be like stay calling joke and all this stuff. I, I was actually at my best. I was actually at my best there. So funny enough, and that's the funny thing about coming up, getting girls and all this stuff. Getting a better job, getting a better job. Know your place in the thing. You'll be like, "Oh yo." At first, you will actually comparison is the thief of joy. That girl right now will coming up, and it's like, "Oh yo," try and get talked about, but talk up and all this stuff, get the best game now. But my guy, and it's like, "Oh yo," you know, actually look at the situation. You will actually you were actually at a better vantage point uh, in your life. That's the funny thing. In your life, in your life, compared to back then. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, I could actually try to play it up cool and all this stuff." But when I actually tried it, I was not that person. I was actually not that person. I tried it. I was actually not that person. I was slicking up for a couple of seconds. People are naturally that person. People are actually not naturally that person. So hey, I became I was who I was in my university years. Funny enough, many girls thought it was fun. Just like, for example, you can be a nerd, and you can actually go there. You can actually be a nerd, be a cool nerd, or a really a nerd. But if you want to be a full-fledged nerd, you have to actually put in the work to get the respect in your nerd career. In your nerd career. So just like, for example, the girls and all these stuff. You can be a guy that can get girl and all these stuff and be bad at it and all these stuff and be like, "Oh yeah, I had a friend that actually was very cool in the high school and very smart, but fall off in the university days." And what happens is that in the university, what happens is that just because it happened to someone else, you would have go there and rationalize that. Say, oh, because you have no. What happened is that your fall off was actually due to your mistakes about your knowledge about your situation, your knowledge about your ability back then. So what happened is that you're coming up and all these stuff. See with career academics and anything like that. You get the fall off. You get the fall off and people will come in like, oh, and hey, it didn't happen to me alone. It didn't happen to me alone and all this stuff. And you're trying to rationalize your fall off, not knowing that I had the ability. If I had it would be one thing, but the fall off came because I didn't have the ability. The fall off came because I had the ability. The mistake came and I rationalize it because I was not alone. People went there and have that situation before, so I'm supposed to like, no. When I actually look at it, the fall off was there. The fall off was there. Yeah, that rationalize it. So the same thing in the working world. You start off from the bottom and all this stuff, and you reach a certain level and they rage bait you, and they rage bait you, and they like, or bait you into it and all these stuff, you're going to actually realize that your vantage point in your career, you were actually at the best you were at that point. It's funny enough, no matter how you actually see that though in your life, just like for example, I'm recording a laptop with a laptop right now, without a CD and all this. Funny enough, you were actually at your best at that point. So they're dissing you at your best. They're dissing you at your best. So that's how funny coming up will be in your working career. Will be like, oh yo, people will actually disrespect you at your best, disrespect you at your best, and it's like those are things they'll be like, oh yo, you can't trust a person as far as it can that was something that you naturally realize that you can't trust a person as far as control. The best thing you can actually do is work towards getting your goal. Getting your goal. When you get your goal, um hey, even if they disrespect you, you were actually in your best position. You were actually in your best position and you can't take that loss. What you can do is just take the critiques and come back and realize that the important thing about the stuff is that you're working every dollar is to come and build your life. Build your life. So funny enough, hey, I somewhat I'm in the fourth year of ownership in my home and all these things. It's grateful to say it's a privilege to actually kind of say that sometimes because when I talk about perspective of experience, I'm out there trying to execute a task, upon a task where I be like, oh yeah, and it involves me going back to where I was coming from, and all the critiques came, everything came because I was trying to execute it in that hole. Every time I go to that home trying to execute the task, I get critiques from the family and all these stuff. So funny enough, you're this in the company working and all these stuff, and you're trying to make money to do this. I say, oh, and every time you're trying to make the money to do this, you're getting critiques from everybody. Say, oh, why you doing this and all this stuff. And it's like, yo, those are the funny things you're gonna realize that, hey, that's the independence that you're fighting for. So that's the independence that you're fighting for. Don't trust your coworkers and all this stuff. Don't trust your family, the family as far as you can show them. The Bible says funny enough, when the mother and father forsake me, the Lord will take you. So in even the Bible say your mother and father can come in and tell you some stuff. Can come in and tell you some stuff about life. It's like you can't trust them as far as you can throw them. Like you can take you can of course part of the Bible say yo you must honor your father because they have more experience than you. But another part of the Bible tells you can't trust them as far as you can throw them. You can't trust them as far as you can throw them. The same thing with the world. You can't trust them as far as can through them. So what will happen is that you may get fired, you may have an interaction with a person at this company, you get fired, and you get fired and all this stuff. And you build a reputation, you build some momentum. You go to a next company and you get called out in a different situation, but you were called out in the same thing. If you actually reach it and be like, oh yo, and all this stuff, you would actually be, it's not the company out there, so the company will survive without you. It's you the name that will come in and be like, oh yo, this and that and all this stuff. So you would, for one, you did accomplish a goal, and then for one, you get the reputation and all this stuff. And then what happens is that the bad reputation spread. The bad reputation spread, and it's like, hey, this and that and all this stuff, and all this stuff. And be like, oh, yeah, hey, you were actually going out to get the goal. So that's the funny thing. Even the work, we were actually going out to get the goal. So going out to get the goal. So it's like funny enough, I would not even trust my coworkers. No matter how far I could through, no matter how far I could through them, I would not trust my coworkers. And all this. The kindness of people would actually work. The kindness of people would actually really coming out and disrespect you and all this stuff. When you act, you're actually at your highest point, and it's something that you actually see coming up, and it's like, yo, take those stuff down, take those stuff down. Like people will disrespect your ability and all these stuff, and it's like, oh yo, those are actually real stuff. There's like, funny enough, the core my school days and all these stuff, the core my those were my lowest points where I actually built my reputation myself. But funny enough, I will say they have different parts, but funny enough, the chorus friends I made there was the best I could actually made in my life. Like I could go out there and actually coming out and me talk about stuff like different stuff, make different friends and all these stuff and all this stuff. But yeah, those people there, even my working career and all these stuff, went to university, saw the best of the best, saw the best of the best. I was like, yo, at the end of the day, those were the best days. Um, those were the funny enough, it was the core people from my high school days or something like that made most of the days actually the best that it could be. Like go there dancing and all these stuff. Hey, using my charisma, I could not even get a dancer. Funny enough, it was actually people that I knew from my high school days came in and see it. And it was like, oh yeah, see my reputation and all this stuff. So sometimes it was actually the people that you built up here. So just like that in the working world, they're trying to build a career and all these stuff. People will rage bait you. People rage bait you and all these stuff. And the funny enough, they don't know you. You don't know that in the working world, you're coming into the working world. It's the first time you actually ever see that person in your life. And if you get fired, funny enough, and that's the funny thing about stuff, you're coming up, you're starting your career, you have people that coming in and be like in that same industry that have been working 10 different industry at one time. So, like for example, you're doing customer service. You see people coming there. When you get your first customer service job, you see that you will be paired up with somebody that was working with customer service for 50 years, 50 years experience with customer service now and all this stuff. And what happens is that the disrespect will come and all this stuff. And what will happen is that you novice to the customer service world or whatever world, and then you take the bait. You go there and you fall off, and then what happens is that the company moves on. The company moves on without you and all this stuff. The company moves on. It's like hey, you don't. The company moves on and it's still be a thriving and all these stuff. But your reputation is gone. Your reputation is gone. All that momentum that you try to build in your and stuff like that. You go there, all that reputation is gone. So so funny enough, the same thing can happen in the working world. You're going out, trying to build your work and all this stuff, trying to build a reputation and all this stuff, and you're getting undermined at various levels. You're getting undermined at various levels. Supervisor, people, so like in this situation, I get the insult from a different company, and it's like, oh, yo, I from different. That's the funny thing about this work. Like I said, I was working in a big company with different people and all. So I get the disrespect there and all this stuff. I here feel like okay, yo, they will be the savior. My own people will be the savior. They will be the savior. I had to go there and fend for myself. And it's like, oh yo. I had to go there and fend for myself. So it's like, oh yo. You reach this far, you're gonna realize that you still can't trust a person as far as you can treat them. Like, you still couldn't trust a person as far as you can treat them. Because even the supervisor and everything like that, they will at the start. The funny stuff with everything is that you see how the people sees you at the start. At the start of your journey, they'll be like, oh yo, hey, that's how the actor was seeing you all this time and all these things. The disrespect and it's like, oh yeah. That actually remember that you work it took you years to actually reach this far. Took you years to reach this far and then the disrespect still come. The disrespect still come from the people and it's like, oh yeah, and all these things. And it's like, oh, it took you years to reach this far and the disrespect still come. And it's like, ah, you couldn't do nothing. You can't do anything about the disrespect. But at this point in my journey, I realized that even the people that is upon you and join the company and they're, oh, you're great culture and all this stuff, even them would actually do that for you. Show you under the bus. Show you under the bus. They will show you under the bus. So it's like, yo, those are the funny things. The experience will be like, oh, yo, we'll be like, yo, that is very important. That, you can't trust them as far as you can control them. You can't trust me as far as you can control me. You can just take my advice and all these stuff and use it with a grain of salt. But my life that I'm trying to build is is my life and all this stuff. Like you have to try to go out and build your life. You have to try to build your life. Because funny enough, I said this I talk about company and stuff like that. If family coming out of breaking your cycle is one of the stuff. You're just trying to make a change and it takes forever for you to actually try to make a change because what happens is that you're coming from a cycle of stuff like that. And be like, oh, you're trying to do these stuff and it's like, yo, the critiques are there. The critiques are coming from the people that you are actually trying to do. It's like, oh yeah. Because what happens is that I talk about pride. Oh, the pride of actually saying, hey, we weren't, you see the people is saying that and all this. So, hey, trying to do something that was never done before. We were trying to do something that was never done before. Now this. So, gladly, funny enough, I'm in the fourth year of my own home ownership. Fourth year of my home ownership. Grateful I could say for 2 months I successfully paid my electric bill. I'm coming from a place where that is actually a taboo thing. So it's like I reached this far, yo, I try to actually be grateful for that. So funny enough, the critiques that you out there are trying to please get pleasure from are from people that are on the other side of the wall, other side of the thing like that. To be like, oh yo, a person out there's a life of crime. Life of crime and all this stuff. You're just trying to do the right and it's like, oh yo. You're just trying to do the right and they come in and be like, oh yo. Um your own family, your own family coming and say like, oh this and that to get you embarrassed and all this stuff. It's like, oh yo. That's wild. That's wild. Look at the people out there so trying to cater to. They out there so on the wrong side of life. Yeah, that's your own family. That's your own family coming on. Can you imagine going working world? They are also trying to make the bread. They're trying to make the bread. Can you imagine that? Going out trying to make the bread, it's even worse. It's even worse. Those are the things that you actually experience in the come up. They'll be like, oh yeah, you're catering to all these stuff. You're catering. The devil work, I don't say the devil work next in very mysterious ways. So they'll be like, oh yeah, funny enough, the devil work next very mysterious ways. And it's like going to from and it's like I seen it, and it's like yo, it's very funny. Like I reach this far, I'm grateful to reach this far, but it's like yo, it's very funny when I'm actually doing it. It'll be like, oh yo, the devil working it very mysterious ways. And it's like yo, the Bible, yo, I'm say the Bible is something, bro. The Bible say yo, honor your father and your mother and all these stuff because the day you belong. The same Bible say eh, your father and mother, your father and mother. When you're if my father and mother forsake me, your father or mother can go away. The lessons that you learn from your mother and father, they can go away and all this stuff. See? But what happens? The Lord will, only the Lord will take me upon all this stuff. So it's like, yo, in actually, the important thing is be like, yo, don't trust your coworkers because what happens? When you're actually trying to do stuff, you're doing something revolutionary. It, you're doing something revolutionary. If you want to be a first generation, this and all these stuff, you will be the first doing the thing. So it's like, yo, just like slavery and all these stuff, there's a reason why growing up there were 7 people without this praise. I tell them in my episode, I tell them that hey, those 3 people, and to this day they will get recognized. I see in another country, Rihanna, I see that all this, and all this stuff, and all this stuff, and they will get. Because what happens is that when actually live long enough, you realize that yo, the plantation life is a real thing. Like when actually reaching the working world, they'll be like yo, plantation life is a real thing. Plantation life is a real thing. Like it's like a real. It's like yo, it's a funny situation. Maybe like, oh, yeah. You have to actually be grateful for wherever you're in your journey and all these stuff. And these lessons are lessons. These lessons are lessons. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Can't just a person as far as country. Because what happens is that a reputation that you built up one place can completely be thrown off by someone else and all this. That's what you learn working at this level company. You'll be like, oh yo, a reputation from one place will be like, oh yo. Like for example, you were the best person at paying back debts and all this stuff. Then all of a sudden you out there to stop paying it and all this stuff. And it's like, oh yo. The reputation come back, you're the worst payback of debt and all these stuff and all these stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, it was just that I was out there so having some issue. But the reputation did still stand. The reputation still stand because what happens is if you actually look at the statistics and everything like that, you did not pay. Yeah, so it's like you were just paying it for years, you're paying it for years, and then the one bad situation come and it sticks. And it sticks. That's the funny thing about coming up and all these stuff. Many of the times I'm coming up going to high school and all these stuff. Trying to be cool and all these stuff. And then a bad reputation come. And I see that person will be like, oh yo, fun and be like, oh yo, hey, I came up, got my degree and everything like that, come back and all these stuff. And they come back and be like, oh back you never know when they could come back and say, back in the day I go to school and with this and that, I jokingly could not pay, ask for free and did not give this and all this stuff and stuff. You never know when they will come back and do this stuff. Just like, and those stuff are community thing. The working world is a different kind of thing where it be like, oh yeah, people will undermine in the worst. Honestly, I was talking to in a customer service level now, and gratefully aviation level and all this stuff. But the higher I go, they will use the funniest of tricks, the funniest of tricks to actually undermine you and be like, oh yo, you want to realize like yo, when I try get in those situation, it's funny, bro. It's funny. It's funny way to be like, oh yo, because yo, you actually had to live it. You actually had to live to say yo, your people really out there disrespecting us like that. Like wow, wow, you were I'm actually employed here, and you actually treating me like, oh yo, I'm a person on the street. Like those were the things like coming up, coming up. They treat him like, oh yo, we're actually a person on the street and all this, and you're gonna realize that, oh yo, people in a company, you can't trust a coworker for anything. Truly. You have to know yourself first and know where you're trying to go. Because what will happen is that a person, a company is not easy. You're trying to build, become a great scientist or whatever in the ghetto. You, every work you're gonna go through more than likely is people that actually percolate the ghetto mind is. If you're just trying to be like, oh, you're trying to be a free man in a plantation and all this stuff, 99% of the people don't have the plantation mindset. So it's like, yo, if you try to run away and all this stuff, they will actually be 99% of them will actually have the tendency to have the plantation mindset to be like, oh, yo, Toby is out there so trying to run away because they want man to get the whip and all this. So that happens in company. That actually happens in company. They'll be like, oh, yo, it's not that. You actually pass that worst phase. The phase that you are now is that you're coming out, you did the work and all these stuff, and during your time when you were coming up, you out there, so you did a bit of reputation there at the company and all this stuff, and all this stuff. The people out there are calling your names and all these things, like, oh, yo, or the company. When you actually go work at the company, they come in and treat you at the name, and it's like, oh, yo, I was actually trying to build a reputation to go and go to school and all these things and all this stuff. And they go there and really realize that when you go to the work, they treat you, they come with the ghetto mentality, like, oh, it's a ghetto mindset, like, oh, yeah, the draconian street mindset. And it's like, oh, you're gonna realize that at that point in time, you have these decisions where you're like, oh, yo, are you trying to go to school? Are you trying to use the word to go to school? Or you want to go there and become like them, become the ghetto, become the popular man and ghetto and all this stuff. That's the funny thing actually which at this level. You're like, oh, you want to become the ghetto cool man, or you want to be the first. Because when I actually came into this company, one of the work that we first come in and say, hey, I use part of the work was that they say, I use this thing to pay my way to school. Use this thing to pay my way to and and all this stuff. And you just remember that you coming in, you basically even get a job and all this stuff. Coming up and all this stuff. Many of your just like for example, my university talk about it and all this stuff. I talk about don't just a coworkers will be like, yo, people out there so you build a reputation with them, you leave and all this. And they always see you with that in mind. They always hearing that in mind and it's like, oh yo, even a serious situation and all these stuff, they always hear with that in mind. They'll be like, oh yo, I was so that's the funny thing about the podcast where be like, oh yo, where for example the person after I listen to get so much traction and be like, oh yo, people would actually come in and not no matter how good you are in your ability, they will actually coming out and not respect your ability. They no matter how good they are coming and be like, oh yo, this you're not this and all these stuff and be like, oh yo. So you actually have to be know yourself. Know yourself and know yourself and focus on your goals. Know yourself and focus on your goals. Because what will happen is that people will come in and make jokes and all these stuff. But they know you there. They know you there and all these things. They didn't see your vision and all. If your vision comes to reality, if your vision comes to reality and then you coming up and getting praise and be like, oh yo, you know, I believe in winning from the start, and it's like, oh yeah, if you actually check the statistics and all this stuff, check the timeline and all these things, you were actually one of the haters back then. So that's the funny thing if you actually make it and all this stuff. You were actually one of the haters back then making the jokes making the jokes and all these things. You were actually one of the people there, the haters there and all these stuff. You actually want to put haters there. And it's like, oh yo, no matter how if you actually make it and everything like that. No matter how you go and all this stuff, you actually want the person there on the other side. On the other side. So that's the point thing about many stuff. You actually build a successful life. These are the core things you'll be like, oh yo, you can't choose a co-worker alcohol and you can't do them. But what will happen is that you will actually reach the higher level and people will not see the disrespect that you actually took to reach that level. And then you will pass under the water and be like, oh yo, hey, didn't hey, you remember those days when they're coming up and all this stuff, and it's like, oh yo, no disrespect. And you make it to somewhere and be like, oh yeah, take the critiques and you're coming out and you become better and you become better. And this is really why I say because this is the funny stuff. You take those critiques and you became better. Then you become the person at the top and all these stuff. You can be the person now that take the negative road and use your leverage now to do a lot of nefarious acts. Or you can just say, oh, I remember those days. I remember those days about how they did me back in my days when I just came up. Funny enough, if I were to actually go there and all these stuff, I would just tell the people that yo, just avoid that. Just avoid that situation. Just don't just do that and all these stuff. You just avoid that situation. You just move on from it. Right? That was what on the bridge. That was situation, but then we don't even talk. We don't even mention it anymore. We don't even mention it anymore. Like if we bring it up, it's going to be the same thing. Like bringing up back in the day. So it's like, but you work to get you are working to reach this far. You're working to reach this far, and if when you actually reach your level, you're going to have to remember that people were actually not taking you seriously. If you actually reach a level, people are actually not taking you seriously. So that's the funny thing about marriage and all these stuff we're talking about. If you go in and a person was not taking you fully seriously at one point, no matter how far you go, they will actually not take you 100% seriously. So those are funny stuff. They'll be like, oh yo, just like you're going to a work when you sign a contract and all these stuff. If the person was always taking you as a joke when you sign the contract, they will always take you as a joke. In when you no matter how much. And but the thing is that it's law and binding. They always take you as a joke. So it's like that the funny thing about where they be like, oh yo, don't trust the coworker, the OG tell me that in the game like that. Like it's when actually reach this far, it's really relevant because what happened is that when actually signed that contract, it was you. It wasn't you and the friends and all this stuff because when I was starting out with a group of people and it was winding down. It was winding down most of the core people left and all these stuff. And then some new people coming in. It's like, oh, new people coming in and all these stuff. New people coming in and left. Yeah, people are coming in and left. And they come in and see you and it's like, oh, no. And it's like, oh, no. Wait, they didn't know your story, man. They didn't know that you were unemployed and all these stuff. They didn't know all these things. So you knew the core fans that you build up the team with and all this stuff. All them left. And people didn't know your story back then. People didn't know. So that's the point thing. Be like, oh yo, they come in and be like, yo, people pass and be like, oh yo. Cause then I went to university. And there's a girl and stuff like that. Like, and I went there and all this stuff. where like, oh, it's fast and all this. Oh, yeah. Hey, we didn't know about the funny thing is that I actually didn't know about it. So it's like, and using those stuff. In the working world, funny enough, I reached this level, and I would say, okay, boom, talk about bereavement and all this stuff. And bereavement passed, and we have to move on. And I'm funny enough about the funeral and all this. Hey, she say, yo, hey, when tomorrow starts without her, yo, don't cry and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, because what happens is that when the tomorrow comes, when the tomorrow comes, and you have to work, go back to work and all these things, and you're gonna be like, oh, did you know? I talk about yo, that's a funny thing about going to career, about reaching that new level. I went to university and all these stuff and all this. You see people coming out and be like, oh, yo, you know my this and that pass away and all this. You'll never know my like I won't know it. You'll never know my thing because my this and that pass away and all this stuff. And I'll be like, oh yo, funny enough, I did not know you back then. Like, I did not know you when you're a few girl. Like, you're just like me. You would actually maybe know me from before the days when my someone may be alive, boom, they pass away and all these stuff. Then you actually have to change your work and all these stuff. And like, oh yeah, they had the same perception of you back then. They had the same perception of you back then, and be like, oh yeah, if they're seeing this and I said, no bro, nah bro, I'm out there seeing it, a person go in the grave, bro. Like, yeah, we're not the same. We're not the same, bro. It's not the same me. Like, oh, yeah. Or just, I, the thing, like, you had to building a career. I was telling you straight, like, oh, yo, this was the thing, like, this was the thing. And you were all this, taking my talk as a joke back then. Then the situation become real and all this stuff, and I realize, like, oh, wow. Oh, in the one die situation, oh, you were actually out to get me as a joke. Like, oh wow, that was actually something that I see you now and be like, oh, but actually reevaluate your situation and be like, oh, you were actually not in a right, we were actually not in a right position. So just like that, boom, the hero story coming in, fall off and all these stuff. You struggle to get the work because I fall off and all these stuff. Um, the struggle to get back your reputation is a journey. It's a journey. And when you get it back, it's something simple can come in and destroy it. Something simple can come and destroy it. And it's like, oh. And it's like, oh, when you actually realize that the concept of yo, don't just recover effect and all this stuff is really relevant because what happens is that you're gonna realize that it was actually really hard to build a reputation. It was actually really hard to build a reputation of anything. Of anything. It was really hard for you to do that. So to get it, and then when you lose it, is really harder. It's even, when you actually lose it, it's really harder. And it's like, after coming and see those, I realize, oh, yo, people are actually taking me as a joke. But back then, if you were to see those people at the same place, you would actually come back and take that as joke same way. So it's like, oh yeah, you didn't change. Like, that's the funny thing about the 29-year thing. Like, if you actually were taking that joke back then, if you did not change your mindset and all stuff like that, you're still taking it as a joke. Like, no matter if you become successful, become the biggest billionaire and all this stuff. If you actually was coming out as another joke, but then you always see the me and so that those are stuff will be like, oh yeah, things that you choose, the life that you choose, you have to actually go full on with that, full on with that, and nobody will actually understand you're doing but you. Nobody will actually understand you're doing but you. Like, yo, you have to go full on, and in the working world, yo, people are cutthroat. People, people will find the best opportunity to advance themselves. Remember the episode where I talk about the I think it was law. No, it wasn't law. I think it was law and governance and stuff like that. I was doing the thing with the with the friend from the start, and the law student, our Caribbean civilization, it was law, and the law person was out there saying we were all group members now, we were all group members, and that person was ready to throw us under the bus, throw us under the bus to get that high grade, and it's like that was a university level. In the working world, it's 10 times that. It was 10 times that, 10 times that. So funny enough, the important thing is that if you're there, so people, when after you know that people are like that, you come back and for one, you learn not to take these things serious because people are really like that. You really had that mindset, and when actually reach this far, you're gonna realize that most people have those mindset for everything. Everyone be, oh, they're the first generation graduating and all these stuff. So you have to use all these. I was coming from the guitar and all these stuff, so you have to use our cutthroat ways and all these. But we can't disrespect. We can't, funny enough, we can't disrespect their thing. We can't disrespect their thing and all these stuff. But at the same time, you're actually going out and trying to achieve your goal. You're trying to achieve your goal, and um, you were coming out and make jokes and all these stuff. And those jokes would um would not stick there because they get some kind of pass because of that privilege or whatever. But if you were to retaliate, all your privileges are all also gone because you do not have that same privilege and all these things. You have to build your worth and all these things. So that was the basic concept. That was that early in my career I was learning. And, and after I reached this far in my working career and I realized like, oh, that was actually true. You'll be like, oh, you have to go and build yourself. But not only build yourself, the person you join with and all these stuff, even your lowest, and even your lowest has to be there and all these things because you're not if you're not that cool, naturally that cool for you no matter how you try to do it, reaction would not be those. Reaction would not be those things. So it's like, we are who we are. And it's like, we are who we are. And no matter how we try to be that thing, we actually not would not try to be. We could not, no matter how we try to be that different person, we could not be it. We could not be it. So, and if we became it, and this is something that I see with experience. If we actually became it, people would actually come in and take you as a joke because you were actually who um who you wanted to be and who you were portraying were not aligned. Where be like, oh yo, you weren't who you say you were. So funny enough, I wanted to be that person back then. I tried my best to be it. And I realized that, oh yeah, in my working career and all these things are not only that during my experience there and all this I became that person. I get my wins and losses and all this stuff. Get the wins and losses get the wins and losses and all this stuff. Coming out in the working world and all this stuff is the same thing. It's the same thing. You're trying to be this person and all this stuff and you realize that in the working world they're also trying to make that work. They're trying to make that work. And you may undermine a situation at a small level. You know, this in the work in the wholesale business. I was unemployed. I was just like, I was unemployed. So there are people out there that was in retail, working that retail job and all this stuff. They 9 times out of 10 they were in a better situation. Man. So I was unemployed and and so you may be in that situation. And what happens is that so you may actually get some disrespect at those levels. Then boom, you became a billionaire and all this stuff. And you still take I become the biggest supervisor in a Fortune 500 company. And what happens is that people will actually treat you the same way. You will actually treat you the same way. And when you treat you the same way, you're gonna realize that the money and all this stuff really change anything. Is that you what happens is that the person's perception of you or the person's perception of you, no matter how much money you make and all these stuff. So coming up and all these stuff. If they see as a joke at the start and all these stuff, um and you take it. You did that. You take it. You did mentally say, oh, this person after was taking my joke. Like, oh, when actually reach higher and all this stuff, not only they will still take you see you as a joke, but you're gonna no matter how much money you make and all this stuff, they still will actually be a joke there. So I remember my days at first, my hard days and all this stuff. Get the worst dance and all this stuff and all these things. Funny enough, I realized that hey, coming up trying to get this stuff like that, a person is naturally a party, naturally in the culture and all this stuff. No matter how I try and all this stuff, we weren't that culture. I came from the culture of winning, bro, and all this stuff. I go to university and all this stuff. My dorm and all these things was more about culture. Oh, and all this stuff. You hear the things that oh we weren't the best at this and all this and that. Oh yeah. When my time of coming up, we were actually be like, oh yeah, winning. We actually get this W, bro. Actually got to get this W. So funny enough, when you actually was coming up, even in your working world and all this stuff, a culture, a person's culture would actually not be your culture and all these things. So you have to actually build that core foundation and be like, oh yeah, this is how I be, this is how I be and all these things. I may get some critiques and all these stuff, but hey, this is how I be. This is how I be. I grew up in the culture of winning. I'm going to this situation now. Maybe like, oh yeah, they say something like, oh yeah, we do, we do. Sports is not our thing like that now. Because I was like, oh bro, come on, bro. Like, yeah, we know that sports not our thing, bro. But hey, we have to actually, if you're out there, so it's working that self-defeating talk, that funny enough, that's the funny thing. We're working that self-defeating talk, and I talk about the episode about well of a company's history and all this stuff. I came in and when I actually looked, there was actually a point in time in that history when the people were talking about people doing well in sports and all this stuff. So you coming in and be like, oh yo, you coming in and be like, oh, a whole culture is saying that, oh yo, we don't, we're not the best at this and all this stuff. And living that thing is like, oh yo, you're actually a self-defeating thing. They actually talking a self-defeating thing. So if you as a person coming in now, be like, oh yeah, I wanna take up my career in sports. I wanna become the career in sports and all this. I end up in this culture. They're walking into a self-defeating culture and jailbreak and stunting yourself. You'll be like, oh yeah, you're stunting yourself and all this stuff. You're walking into a losing situation and all this. Because what happens that the mindset, the funny thing about the brain mindset part, yeah, the mindset was that you always be the loser. So losing is their cause. So you have to be like, oh yo, um losing is their culture. So that's their thing. So when you go there, you have to actually break the mindset and be like, oh yo, I'm trying to change this. So it's like, oh yo, winning was our thing back in the day. So was not the best winner, but I try my best to do the change. Just like that, just, just like that. Yeah, you did your part. But what happens that the culture is there. Culture is there. So what happens that you go into a culture now and be like, oh yeah, they do a lot of undermining things. So go into the working world and you hear people talk about a lot of undermining things that people do and all this stuff. And then you go there and be like, oh yo, I was a person out there. So that's the point where you're coming up. I talk about things like links and all these stuff. We'll be like, oh, all these things, links and all these things. We'll be like, oh yeah, um, funny enough, you should try to come out of come out from the bottom and all these stuff. Yeah, the terminology has to change. The terminology has to change. We'll be like, oh yeah, you can't use those terminology and all these stuff. Different terminology you have to use. You have to be like, oh yeah, yeah, those were the things back in the day. But that's not the terminology here. It's network and network and all. And funny enough, and that's the reason why I said no to network because I say, for example, you coming up, I'm coming up and all this, and I be like, I know you from a certain place. I know you from a certain place, and I I I see the I know you from a certain place, and then you start use the right terminology, and you're like, oh, yeah, funny enough, it doesn't it doesn't fit you. And what will happen is that I am the person out there, so person about getting frowned upon, and then boom, because I didn't see you as that person. I am throwing it out on you. So use the right terminology. Is that it throwing up on you? So it's like you, um, I will be the person stunting your goal. I will coming up seeing you stunting your goal because what happens that I did not see that from you. So just like the same place again, they coming out. I am a person out there, so hey, coming from winning, trying to win and all this stuff. They coming out and be like, yeah, next. They coming out with that person, the same coming be like, oh yeah, culture, and all these stuff is my thing now. That is my thing now to actually come up and come up singing and all these stuff and be like, oh, this is my heaven. This is my heaven. So just like, hey, the two of you would actually have to know yourselves to be like, oh, yo, we actually fun and jokes, fun and jokes aside is like, hey, we come in a culture of performance. We come in, I come in a culture of performance. So we come from joke. Like, we did come from joke. So your performance was the thing that get you there. Yeah, you will thrive in that environment. But you mean now coming from a different environment, be like, oh, my thing would not be thriving there, thriving there. So you have to go back and rebuild yourself. You have to go back and rebuild your, be like, oh, I was actually going out to make this goal and all these things. These people are actually really self-defeating in terms of this goal. You'll be like, oh, yeah, this and that. So you could be the one of saying that, hey, we be the self-defeating people and all these stuff. And then and join the masses and be like, oh, how you can actually be like, oh, yo, this is my bread and butter. This is what I actually do well, and no matter how you go, this is what I actually do well. Let's say, for example, back out my domestic affairs days and all these things. And funny enough, the days they disrespect those days like wow, and all these stuff. But funny enough, those core principles of setting up and breaking down and all these things, those are my strongest skills, one of my strongest skill set in my life now. The more like for example I'm coming up and all this stuff, I see me after doing these other things other from the goal and all this stuff. Because what happens that I actually realized from those days that was actually my strongest asset. My strongest asset. So it always tendency to try to go there before I do everything else. Like I actually try to go there and do everything else because that was my strongest thing from back in the days. And what happened is that people will not see those things. They didn't know that that was the thing that people is a falling on and those things, but that was our thing from back in the day. That was what I was good at back in the day, setting up and breaking down. So even though I may say it, people is a falling down and embarrassing all this stuff, in my working world or my adult world and all this stuff, setting up and breaking down and all this stuff like that. That is my strong asset. Those are my bread and butter. Those are my bread and butter. if we can, those are my bread and butter. What happens that each level, because that's your bread and butter, each level you go, you're gonna be doing that at a higher level. And if you don't realize that, people don't realize that, oh, that was your strongest asset. I talk about, yo, when you actually break out a cycle and all these stuff, those things you get the worst drawback. You get the worst drawback because what happens is that they don't realize that, hey, that was actually your strongest asset. And it's like, oh yeah, that was actually your strongest asset, and you were actually just trying to do your strongest asset to your best at the ability. So what will happen is that the whole community will come around and be like, oh yo, this and that and so on. It's like, oh no, I was actually going through and doing my strongest asset. You know, that was the best thing I could actually do. That was actually the best thing I can do that. So I'm leaning into that. I'm leaning into that and live and die by that. And what happens is that because you also lean into that, hey, that's not the culture. It's like, oh, that's not anything. Like, hey, that was no matter how far I go, that thing was the best thing. That was my best asset. So I would actually go. I would actually be going out and trying to do those stuff. No matter how much I do something else, that was my best asset. So what will happen is that, and this relates to, I mean, with our next episode of the America, when I was mentioning now, maybe like, oh yeah, critiques will come, but sometimes when I try to do stuff, that's like when I try going to my BAC days, when I try to pick up the mantle or sign the contract, or take the rent in, I could not go half fast with it. I, funny enough, during my year experience there, people took up the role and then they left and all these stuff. I could actually go half ass with people. Even though I get the hate and all this stuff, you had to actually finish the job. You actually have to go to finish the job. And what I realize is that the biggest critique is not the fact that you um the, the biggest critique did not come doesn't come from when you were doing the job, or those. The critique comes in the middle. The biggest critiques comes in the middle when you're actually executing the thing. Because what happens is that people actually have the perception and be like, oh yo, this is getting this and cheer and all this stuff. What happens is that um they will see your vision. They will see your vision at the time. So what will happen is that the if you did not accomplish your goals, and this is gonna that was a simple thing back then, but it's a big aspiration now. I'm talking about the 40 home ownership, moving in, you talk about moving bigger furniture and all these stuff like that. The biggest critique comes now, is in that um the biggest critique is that the fact that you actually um do the thing. The worst critique is in the middle, where the vision isn't finished, where they did not finish that goal. So when you actually did not finish that goal, you see the people. Just like, for example, my unemployment is when I'm trying to do podcast, I talk about things. The Bible say, yo, my honey of all my abilities belong. The same Bible say, yo, they too will pass into that. Yo, they too cancel, yo. They too cancel, yo. So it's like, that's real. That's real. Coming up every day. They coming up and say, yo, work, and you are performing that thing. So it's like, uh,
Well, this is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching and look forward for the next episode. To support this podcast, go to anchor.fm/cssb/support or become a sponsor for this episode. If you have a product that you want to have more exposure, DM me on the Instagram page, Reframing Mindset Podcast, or on Twitter at ReframingP. Either way would help. Thank you regardless for listening, and here's a preview for the next episode.